So this is not a huge surprise if you follow the NFL on a regular basis like I do, or if you understand the challenge that has always been there for the NFL to hold any type of all-star event. It's different from other sports in a lot of ways because you can't stop the NFL season when you've got the push and pull already between the owners and the players association. Owners and the commissioner, they've made it their stated goal to add an 18th regular season game. Even 17 took quite the maneuvering and the finagling and the negotiating with the union to shoehorn that in a 17th regular season game. But they're determined to move to 18, which will mean an extra bye week and the season's longer. The Super Bowl this year is Valentine's Day, which is the latest it's ever been. And once they add an 18th regular season game and another bye week, which is what has to happen in order to make the scheduling work, that Super Bowl is going to be even later. For heaven's sakes, the Super Bowl is going to be on President's Weekend. Now, that doesn't bother the NFL, but it does bother the union because you're asking athletes and coaches to give up even more of their time. Will they be royally compensated for it? Yes. But that wear and tear, the injuries, the violent nature of the game is such that you never really recover over the course of a season when you're still playing. And obviously, the goal is to get to the postseason. And if you've got a season that begins with training camp in July and you make it to the Super Bowl and you aren't done playing until essentially the end of February, that's a lot to ask and not a lot of recovery time after all those games on your body. Again, no one's complaining. Well, okay, there's some complaining. The union does not want to see an 18th regular season game. But the issue is that how do you get players excited about participating in another game that would be your all-star affair or your Pro Bowl in the case of the NFL? And the challenge has always been, where do you put it? And you may know this because of the fact that the NFL has tinkered with the schedule multiple times, not just the schedule, but the location. And the fact that very often the best players in the league are part of the Super Bowl, so they're not participating. You can't put it in the middle of the season like the NBA, the NHL, the WNBA, Major League Baseball, because not only will players not want to be part of it, but at the same time, you can't ask them on a day off to travel to Hawaii or to pick up and go to Florida or whatever is the case. They are very much creatures of habit, as are many athletes, and their game weeks are so intense about preparation for the game to come. You cannot stop the season in the middle and say, okay, here's our all-star break, because you're going to have, for the most part, the vast majority of players coming up with some kind of an injury that will keep them from making that trip to Hawaii or participating in another game where they're taking the extra risk that they might get injured. So it's not feasible or a good idea to stage the Pro Bowl during the middle of the season, which meant that the NFL has done it late, like in between Championship Sunday and Super Bowl, or they've done it after the Super Bowl the following weekend. And there are times where, especially when it was in Hawaii, where Pro Bowlers, it is considered an honor, would take their families on a vacation. So it wasn't so much about the game necessarily or the festivities. It was really more about the fact that they had a chance to take their families to Hawaii, in many cases, having not been there before. And once the season is done, there's so much intensity and pressure and stress. And as I say, just the workload on these athletes and coaches during the course of a season, that to try to let your guard down and take a breath and take a break just doesn't fit the mode that they're in for the vast majority of the NFL season. Though bye weeks are great, and you will see guys often be so thankful for a bye week. They can spend more time with family. Maybe they do even travel, although not many of them. They don't get a lot of days off over a bye week, maybe an extra one or two. But when it comes to the Pro Bowl, they love seeing either former teammates or being on the same team as someone they admire, generally have to go up against, but now get the chance to have fun and spend time with with other Pro Bowlers from the league. And recently, of course, they turned it into a flag football and skills competition. Okay. So no pads, no helmets, just an opportunity to go out there and kind of flash your skills. And the Mannings, Peyton and Eli were the captains, and they would pick their teams or, their different flag football groups, and they'd throw them out there. And so the first year of the flag football, I did watch only because I wondered what it would be like. And I thought it was mildly entertaining. But I'll be perfectly honest, I generally forget the Pro Bowl is going on because in between AFC and NFC championship weekend and the Super Bowl, so much of the sports media and so much, especially of the media that covers the NFL, not only are you taking a breath, but you're making preparations to travel. So a lot of times over the past 15 years, I've been to the vast majority of Super Bowl weeks. So you're making preparations to travel to Radio Row. You've essentially got the vast majority of the media descending on the site of the Super Bowl, not to mention vendors and corporate partners. And of course, the NFL moving its operations to the site of the Super Bowl city, which this year is LA. And so to have the Pro Bowl on that off Sunday, while it might be fun for fans, and I hope it has been fun in the past for some of the athletes, really, I forget all about it. And I don't remember the last time I actually even talked about it outside of when it did move to the flag football game, and I just gave my initial impressions of it. But I don't watch as a member of the media, and it's clear by the declining ratings that very few fans were interested in it. So here we come to this decision made at the annual owners meetings, which are taking place actually this week, right before the season kicks off. One of the major items on the agenda was to approve the new owner of the Seahawks and the sale for $9.612 billion. And that has been approved. And so there is a new owner in the NFL fraternity. But the other major headline is that they have done away with the Pro Bowl. They will still designate players Pro Bowlers. And so there is that honor associated with a player. And it's kind of neat because it's partly determined by peers and others who are in the league, the guys that you match up against or the guys that you're competing with. It is an honor for these men to be named as Pro Bowlers. And it sometimes, I wouldn't say in every contract, but in some contracts, being named a Pro Bowler means you get a bonus or a raise that kicks in. So it's that incentive as well. But more and more, there is waning interest in any kind of a competition. And the athletes themselves, while the first time it's kind of fun, maybe the second time, if it's a new team, really their interest has waned too. And so the NFL is taking this step to eliminate the Pro Bowl. So no AFC versus NFC, though there'll be some kind of an in-person party or maybe an award ceremony in LA. Instead of holding the game, they will honor the Pro Bowlers. I don't know how many guys will show up for that unless it's some special award. And so it's kind of interesting to think about. It is a long-standing tradition. It'll be weird not to have a Pro Bowl game, though, like I said, it's kind of fallen into a ditch. But the NFL had played a traditional Pro Bowl game in some way, shape, or form, going back to the late 1930s, outside of the 1 year with the COVID pandemic. They didn't do it in 2021. But they've had this flag football iteration. They've had dodgeball. They've had skills challenges. But none of it has really increased the interest of football fans. And so they're getting rid of it. And I wonder whether or not we'll see other sports follow suit. So I've kind of thought about the different sports, and the huge major difference, again, is the fact that the Pro Bowl was held at the end of a season when guys are just tired or they're injured or they're not interested in traveling again. They've already spent so much time away from their families. Football's been all consuming for them since July. They're worn out and they want a break. And there's nothing wrong with that. Football requires all of them physically, mentally, emotionally. It can take a toll. And so these guys need a break and need a rest. And so I'm not at all surprised that the NFL made this move, but the big difference is that for the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, the WNBA, the All-Star competitions come during the season. Now, you have your challenges there as well. Of course, you always have athletes who will bow out of the All Star competition or being part of All Star weekend or the festivities because they're injured or they just don't want to go. Let's be perfectly frank about this. LeBron's talked about it in the past. He doesn't really care about going to an All Star competition. He'd rather be home. In fact, he said the same thing about playing on Christmas Day. So there are grizzled veterans, if you will, who would rather take that week off. And to that end, the NBA has extended the break so that now even those athletes who participate in the All-Star weekend do actually get a few days off. They don't get the same amount of time off. Major League Baseball has instituted rules where if you don't participate in the actual All-Star game when you're voted in, then you have to miss time on either side of the break. So you can't fake an injury. They require that if you're going to miss the All-Star festivities, that it means you're actually hurt. And so they require that you miss a game or a start on either side of the All-Star break. So they're trying to prevent each of these sports, trying to prevent athletes from just blowing it off because it's fan voted in many cases. And they recognize that this is their one chance to have this collection of superstar power, the brightest faces, the biggest stars, the most outrageous talent. And so they take it seriously. But it matters more, I think, and people are more interested when it's in the middle of the season. But that's not feasible for the NFL. They can't extend the schedule any more than they already have. And as we've talked about, you're not going to add a game in the middle of an NFL season that is so all consuming and so much is required of you already when you participate in it. So I don't think other sports will follow suit. And think about it from the perspective of each of the individual sports. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game is the only one that I actually watch. I love the Major League Baseball All-Star Game for one reason, because you actually get the one-on-one competitions that you crave. You actually have to see the best, well, not have to see, you actually see the best aces and the best pitchers going against the best hitters and that battle of wills and wits, and someone's got to win. Why? Because it's not a time sport. You have to get 3 outs. 3 outs at the top of the inning, 3 outs at the bottom of the inning. So even though they may not be trying quite as hard, you still have to get through the game, which means they've still got to play a competition that somewhat resembles what you might see on your average Thursday, Friday, Saturday, MLB weekend. So the game itself in Major League Baseball resembles more of an actual competition than any of the other All-Star festivities. I don't watch the NBA because I don't want to see and they've tinkered with the format. I don't want to see teams score 450 points over the course of 4 quarters, or the way they do it now, they break it up. And so you're supposed to win each quarter. And they've tweaked the format so many times that I can't even, it's not that I can't. I choose not to follow all the various tweaks they've made because it gets too complicated. If you have to explain to someone your format, it's just not worth the investment. But I do love that the NBA puts on a show, meaning they have celebrities in whatever city they go to. There's celebrities from all walks of life, music and movie stars and other athletes. It's still a place to be seen, if you will. So it's quite a party. That makes the NBA All-Star festivities worth it. And the fact that you do get some of these really cool moments where you might have superstars that never play together getting an opportunity to run up and down the court. But there's no defense in it. And it's almost an insult to us that we should think this in any way resembles actual basketball. Although I guess some would tell you in the NBA that when you get to about February, there's not a whole lot of defense being played anyway. But it is kind of fun to see some of these guys on the same rosters and the same teams that you wouldn't normally get over the course of the regular season. And again, it's a party. They make a ton of money. Everywhere the All-Star game lands, there's a bunch of money made, not only because of the people who show up to be seen, but the various performances. And I remember one time, I think it was Orlando, where they hosted the All-Star game, and you got Cirque du Soleil doing the introductions. So it's a big attraction outside of basketball, and they're not going to get rid of that party. When it comes to the NHL, it's not quite as much of a party, but it definitely is a festivity or a weekend that the players enjoy because they get a chance again to kind of take it easy. The intensity wanes for a second. They get to go through some of these fun competitions where they show off their individual skills, like the hardest shot and the quickest skate, those types of things. I actually enjoy the skills competitions too. And then thinking about the All-Star weekend for WNBA, I think there's still a lot of novelty with it. Not that it hasn't been going on over the course of the 30-year lifespan of the WNBA, but not a whole lot of people were paying attention to it. And now that you do have stars that have become more household names like Caitlin Clark and Asia Wilson and Nafisha Collier and Brianna Stewart, and I mean, go on and on. I could name a ton of them, Kelsey Plum and whoever else. So it's more fun, I think, because there's more fans now invested and it's actually become an event that people want to see. So it's almost in its second wind, if you will, where it was definitely going on, but not as many people were paying attention. So I don't think we're going to see the other sports follow suit simply because they found a format for the most part that works for the sport in the middle of the season. And because the seasons are so long and because in the NBA and the NHL specifically, you play 82 games. In Major League Baseball, for heaven's sakes, it's double that. It's actually a nice break for them. And because the respective leagues have turned it into a break where if you're not selected to the All-Star game or you're not participating in a skills competition, well, you can go hang out with your family. You can get away from the grind for a few days. The athletes do appreciate it. But you try to hold that in June when the finals are done, and yeah, peace out. Most of the athletes, especially those that aren't in the playoffs, are not going to come back and participate. And the ones that are in the playoffs just logged all these extra games, and it probably took a physical toll, and they're not interested in participating either. I do understand why the NFL took this step. I do not think other sports will follow because just by the nature of the beast, they've managed to find the right niche and the right timing for their all-star breaks, whereas the NFL has struggled with that now for the last few years, where athletes are less and less inclined to make it a priority. I don't think I'll miss it. I'm not sure if you'll miss it. I don't think I'll miss it.